What up, patients? This is Marquis
and AD.
And you have tuned in to the Painkillers podcast, man. You know, we have one mission, one goal, one thing that we want to do every single episode, and that is
talk your pain away.
Hey,
that's it.
That's all we want to do is talk your pain away, man.
That's
like, you know, so much stuff happening in the world and going on in your personal life and in the world and your family and all that. And we just all need to escape. So we want to talk your pain away, man. And today we're going to touch on a real sensitive, touchy topic that is very dear to both of our hearts. We both experienced it. And AD, what are we talking about today?
Man, we're talking about suffering in silence.
Suffering in silence, man.
Suffering in silence.
I think so many people deal with this, and so we want to kind of shed some light on it and just talk some of that pain away.
Yeah, for sure.
So we're going to start right after this.
If there's some medication I could take to make me wanna hate you and kill this ache. If there's some medication I could take, no, I would do it. But they don't got a pill for
All right, guys, welcome back, man. Today on the Painkillers, we're going to be dealing with suffering in silence, man. I think more people deal with this than often. A lot of times we don't really share it or talk about it or expose it, but I know I've had my share of experiences with it. AD, I know you've had your share of experience with it. And today we just want to be transparent and open and hopefully bring some healing to some people as well.
Yeah, man. I think for one, I think we got to identify with why people typically suffer in silence. Like, we could be dealing with certain things and then we'll tell ourselves either we are okay.
Right.
You know, it's not as bad, you know, and then we start even rationalize like, oh, people deal with worse.
Yep.
You know, and so we give off these reasons on why we can't communicate what we're dealing with, what, you know, what our pain points may be, where we are struggling.
Yeah.
And then we will just kind of settle in that. So it's like, even with, I think, the pandemic, like a lot of us were dealing with being in our own heads.
Correct.
And then it's like, well, everybody's dealing with it, so I'm not going to talk about it. But I think that one of the things I kind of want to peel back the first layer with is that I think a lot of times, like when we're suffering in silence, it's an unsaid pride issue.
That's a good point. I think, I definitely think pride is at the hem of it.
Yeah.
You know, especially when you don't want to feel like someone else needs to be responsible for what you're going through.
Yep. You take on and you're just like, well, hey, this is my thing.
Yeah.
You know, and I'd be okay. And sometimes you will immediately say, yo, I'll fix it myself.
Right.
And a lot of us have come to the place of self-diagnosing and also self-doctoring.
Yeah,
so it's like self-medication is like, it's like, yo, like, I know what's wrong with me. I'll be okay. You know, I don't want to bring more attention to this. Then, you know, certain people, you just like, yo, I don't want to bring attention to me at all.
Right.
So I just rather just deal with it how I feel I need to deal with it. But I think it's an underlying pride thing.
Yeah, I think it can be. And I think a lot of us deal with pride. We don't really understand what pride is or know how to identify it. You know, I know my grandmother used to always say, like, you're just so prideful. You're just so prideful, you know. And at the like the center of just life, I think we really need to take that off and say, you know what, there's no need to be prideful. There's no need to, you know, feel like you're by yourself or in it alone or have to be this macho man or whatever. And I think if we can ever get past how people perceive us and get the support that we need, the dangerous part from my experience is once you survive suffering in silence once, you then think you can keep doing it over and over and over and over again. You get what I'm saying? Like,
that's good, bro.
It's kind of like, oh, I beat it once, you know, and then it shows back up and you're just like, oh, I'll beat it again. And then you keep doing that. And then you get to that point where this last time you do it, you may not make it, or you may not come through, or you may end up making a crazier decision. So we have to be careful that we don't start or perpetuate that same cycle of, I got this.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to do that, you know?
Yeah.
So yes, pride is that first thing that gives you that motive of, oh, I can do this alone, or I'll be all right.
Mm-hmm.
And then you beat it once, and then you create that cycle of, okay, it's coming back again, and I'm gonna just go silent. I'm gonna pull back. I ain't gonna post. I'm gonna, just drift away and then try to deal with it by yourself. And yeah, that can become a habit, and then a cycle, and then an addiction.
Yeah, man. I think you hit it right on the head. Like when you saying, like, yo, I beat it this one time, and then then after a while you live in that normality.
Yeah,
this is normal.
Yep.
It's just, I got to do what I got to do.
Yeah.
And we will silence our own pain by just saying, well, or we'll put that attention somewhere else.
Yeah.
So we will
redirect it.
Yeah, we'll redirect the energy. I know for me, I put that pain like in work.
Yeah.
I just get busy just trying to do stuff, trying to work, trying to generate income or whatever the case is. And, and then, or it'll show up in me just kind of secluding to myself.
Right.
And just cutting off everybody. Like, I don't want to talk. No, I don't want to, hey, what's wrong with you? Nothing. I'm good. Leave me alone type of situation.
Yeah.
So I know much like majority of our African-American culture, like everybody claims like how much they hate liars, right? I just hate a liar, hate a liar, hate a liar. But we lie all the time.
All the time.
Everybody, like, we lie all the time. Hey, how are you? I'm good. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Nothing. What's going on with you? Nothing. And then later on, you ask
Truth comes out.
Yeah, the truth comes out. So what's wrong with you? Then I'd be like, oh, I'd be a butthole if I told you that you told me, yeah, you was good, and then you was lying the whole time. It's the idea that we begin, I think, at the foundation of suffering in silence is pride, but then also at the same time, it's the idea that I don't want to let people in because I don't know how they're going to perceive me.
Right.
If they're going to look at me as weak.
Right.
Or this situation is small while you tripping about it. Or, what I'm saying? Like, and we look at it from so many different angles from that perspective to say, well, this is not that bad, or whatever. And it could be like whatever's hurting you is if it's big and bad enough for you to hurt, then it should be big and bad enough for you to address. Absolutely.
And I think that we have to get to the point in our waking life that we stop feeling like we're by ourselves, or that we're the only one who are facing these type of truths. And isolation, I used to think, was the key to recovery. And then I realized that it's not, when you isolate yourself, you seclude yourself, you pull yourself back, you're now in a space where all you can do is repeat and rehash what you're dealing with, what you're going through. And by the time you get done, man, you done beat yourself up so bad that, you don't want to come out of that. So I think for me, I had to choose to no longer want to suffer. And I know that's kind of weird because it's like, well, who makes a decision to suffer?
Yeah.
But sometimes when you isolate yourself, you put yourself in that environment to choose to be in that type of space. So I had to make the decision like, yo, I don't want to suffer no more. I really want to live my best life. I really want to, and I had to remove every other option from the equation. So no more.
So it was like you held yourself accountable to that.
Yeah. Like
Wow.
it was literally AD me saying, one day, I think I'm going to choose me. Cause my suffering in silence had a lot to do with other people, whether it was what I went through as a child, or whether it was what I didn't have, or whether it was how people treated me, or how, I felt or looked like. So then I had to make the decision and say, you know what? I want to choose me and remove every other option from the equation. And it had nothing to do personally with people. It was just, I wanted to choose me. And in that choice, that feeling started to evaporate. It started to kind of like,
lift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even when people would say to me, my decision was affecting them.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, well, me being present was affecting me. So I had to choose me, you know, like everybody wants to make it about them.
Everybody.
But then the day that you decide to make it about you, then you're penalized for it.
Yep.
But I can't escape this person.
Mm-hmm.
So then I have to enjoy this person. And the best way that I can enjoy this person is that I have to separate myself from anything that doesn't add value or support to this person.
Man, that's so good. Because, you know, and back to your point of like you would isolate and then be like, you know, all right, I'd be okay. You know, I was doing that too. And, you know, the phrase is, you know, time heals all wounds. But that's not true.
Yeah, it's not always true.
Because the reality of it is if the womb is not properly treated, time will infect it and you got to get it cut off. Like, so we need to properly treat it and then apply time to it after it's been treated. Like after we've dealt with it, after we've talked about it, after we've tackled it, after we've, you know, whatever. But a lot of times we just feel like, oh, I can just go in silence. I recluse to myself, then I'd be okay. Then I come back out. And it's like, yo, you can come back out. But if there's still unresolved issues and things that aren't healed, it's going to show up again.
Yeah.
It's going to show up again.
Yeah. I think you really got to identify the trauma. Like you being cut versus you being shot.
Yeah.
Two different types of afflictions, you know what I'm saying? Which then will dictate what you have to do. You need stitches, you need surgery, you need to be bandaged up. And I think sometimes we don't look at physical trauma the same as we do emotional trauma. And a lot of people who suffer in silence are dealing with emotional, mental trauma versus physical trauma, you know? For
sure.
Physical trauma can happen and it cause you to go and suffer in silence, but it's mostly mental and emotional, you know?
For sure.
So you definitely have to identify, okay, what is the trauma? Where's the affliction? What is the wound? And then try to address it from that point.
Yeah. And then I think having a safe space that you don't feel judged
at all,
and feel like this space can allow me, you know, to be me and to talk and to communicate and it not be used later against me or it not be brought up again or whatever the case is. Like we create those spaces, then that is also what allows us not to suffer in silence, because some people are suffering in silence because they tried to open up at one stage or at one point in their life and it was either rejected or it came back to them. What they shared and then, you know, just all types of things. So like finding a real safe place for communication to happen and for people to be welcomed and loved for being themselves. I think that is overlooked because that's what's needed. The reason why some people are suffering in silence because they feel like they don't have another resort. Yeah.
And that resort may not even be in your known environment. It may not be people you know. It may not be friends you have. It may not be family. It may come from a counselor or a therapist. It may come from a freaking place in the world that you go to retreat to. You know, it may come from different types of outlets that you get into, like, you know, support groups and things of that nature. I think we have to explore every option and stop looking for it to be close, you know? You know, we go to the most convenient thing and don't realize that the most convenient thing may not be the most beneficial thing. And we try to find things that are free, and sometimes things that are free ain't the most beneficial thing. So you may have to invest in something that really gives you that support, you know? And so I think exactly what you're saying is very, very key, that first you identify, I know I'm dealing with something. Now I have to find that safe space, and that safe space may not be friends that I know. It may not be family that I know. Then I have to use every outlet or support and explore those things.
Well, I mean, I did that, you know, when I went to my counseling facility, shout out to Onsite, I knew nobody there. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it was a men's emotional healing retreat type of situation. I was the only African-American there. They were strangers going in. I was apprehensive. It's the only black dude at this white resort with all of these white people in the woods. Fam. Fam, I'm on Get Out and I don't even realize it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, but going there, I gained over 5 days, no cell phone, no TV.
Yeah.
I gained friends and connections there that wouldn't have been gained anywhere else.
Right.
But because we couldn't even share full names, occupations.
Yeah.
We talked about none of that stuff.
Yeah.
Your name is Adrian.
Yep.
That's what's up. My name is Mike.
Yeah.
My name is this. So it was like you don't get to know the person based upon title. You get to know the person based upon who they really are.
Your interaction.
Yeah. And then it's just like, one of the guys, me and him are now friends for real. So we talk on social media openly and stuff like that. And so when I first met him, I was like, oh, like this little, guy, and me and him got to talking, and when we started sharing our stories in sessions, our stories kind of were aligned. And then we just got to talking, we were around each other. And over those 5 days, like, I created a brotherhood with him that through both of us realizing we were suffering in silence. Now we're trying to communicate.
Right.
And I think both of us we're kind of scared. So we kind of latched onto each other out of fear. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, hey bro, hold my hand. Not for real, but you know what I'm saying? But but it's like hold my hand, I'm gonna hold yours while we go through this process.
Yeah.
And we went these 5 days. They create talking areas, they create exercises, they create adventures for us to do and stuff like that. And coming out of that, boom, the next week, he and I, because you don't have a cell phone there. You're not even supposed to change numbers, not even supposed to, whatever. But like the last day, you got the option, if you guys want to exchange, you can, once you get your cell phone and you're getting ready to check out. And so, man, we, exchange information. And then like this dude is a famous country singer.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? Like famous, like, you know what I'm saying? And it was other big name people. And I was like, oh, I don't even know y'all. Like, cause they're not in my world.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And one's a famous producer, like produced for Britney Spears, you know what I'm saying? So like I'm sitting around here, I'm like, oh, like that's pretty dope. Like I get a chance to know you all outside of what you all do. Right. But it allowed me, again, to your point, that my safe space became not people I knew.
Facts.
Not, because oftentimes, like when we have people we know we have expectancy of them, right? Like I expect that if I tell you something, it's not going to be shared again. That's why I think a lot of times, like when people's feelings are hurt, it wasn't their feelings, it's your expectation.
Lacks of expectation.
Yeah. Like your expectation was hurt. You didn't think that this person would do you like this.
And then they did.
Yep. That's your expectation. So, man, like, like sometimes, like, I was saying all that to say, to your point, like sometimes we might have to go outside of those circles. You might have to find a support group, and that wasn't cheap. You know what I'm saying?
Course.
I mean, to travel to Tennessee, go to a facility, you got food, you got housing, and it's like, why would you pay all of these thousands of dollars to go somewhere to shut down your phone, to be at the mercies of someone else because I care that much about my healing?
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? And until I think we get to a point where our healing is a priority, we will never invest in our growth, our mental stability, and things of that nature. And so then therefore you suffer in silence outside of your ability, not because you're like, some of us are choosing to be ignorant. Like we're just saying like, I ain't even gonna look that stuff up. There's plenty of places you can go. If you say, well, I don't have that circle, you can create that circle.
Yeah, you can.
You can.
And the way the world is right now, like, it's a big world, but it's so much smaller now because of technology, internet, social media, all that.
Yep.
And I think, you had said something really important. I think you got to really put a value on your healing.
You do.
Like, if you don't feel like your healing is worth it, then you're never going to make that investment.
Nope.
If you don't feel like you being around another 10, 15 years is worth it, you're never going to. And then you got to break up with self pity, like pitying yourself or feeling like, oh, I just deserve this, or I should just deal with this. Like, I think you got to break up with that.
Yep. And that victimization.
Yeah, like you got to really just like, and I think when you talk about like the people that are there, right? Most people look at our lives from the external perspective, and they think that based on how it looks, that you're good. And the reality is everything that is hurting doesn't necessarily show on the surface.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was listening to a doctor explain how all of our internal organs don't really have feelings. And he was saying how when something hurts internally in your organ, you don't really feel it. It's not you're not feeling that organ. He was explaining how what you're feeling is your brain telling you something's wrong in your body. And it's trying to indicate where in your body it's hurting, but that actual organ is not the thing that you're feeling that's hurting. You know, like you drop something on your foot, you're gonna feel that, like, okay, I can feel that.
Yep.
He was talking about how the things internally you don't really know. He talked about the silent killers, the things that are happening within your body that doesn't give you an indication that something's wrong, like high blood pressure. You can have a high blood pressure and never know.
Yeah.
You can have, hepatitis and never know because there are no indications that something internally is wrong. And it's the same when we're dealing with these type of moments. It's like, yo, everything that's going on inside of me, it may not show.
Yeah.
So I may still look nice. I may still drive nice. I may still act nice. But inwardly, something's going on. And everybody is looking on the outside saying, well, dang, I didn't know all that was happening. And I think we got to get to that point where, like you said, we stop lying about it and saying, like, I'm not okay. And it's okay not to be okay. So that I can get okay.
I mean, like, and that's the God on the truth. And I think also too, we have to look at the fact that everybody that we think is suffering in silence is not suffering in silence. And what I mean by that is, just because you don't know, that don't mean that they were suffering in silence.
Facts.
In this day and age, in this culture, especially like with like the deaths last year of Virgil, you know, shout out to Virgil, one of the best designers the world has seen.
And nobody knew.
And nobody knew. And then people like, oh, I hate that he suffered in silence. He wasn't suffering in silence. The people that needed to know knew.
Absolutely.
Like, you know what I'm saying? And it was the same way with Chadwick Boseman. It's like, you know, it's like one of those things where it's like, we feel like if it's not on social media, then they suffered in silence. No, they went through that process with those that truly cared about them. So just because we don't know as a culture and as a people doesn't mean that they were suffering in silence. We're talking about those that are voluntarily choosing not to say anything for the sake of, I don't have a circle, I don't have a people, I don't have this. Like,
I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to put all this on someone else.
And a lot of that stuff, you know, if I'm honest, is in your own head, number one. And then number two is us battling with our own sense of rejection.
Oh yeah.
So because we are afraid that our vulnerability is going to be rejected, we just automatically take it off the table. Someone was asking me, they was like, man, you know, like, you be calling me out, like when I be doing certain things, you be saying like, oh, that's your rejection. And I was like, they was like, I'm not rejected. I said, let me put it to you like this. If you text me and you say something, right? And if you be like, hey, what's up? Do you think you can take me to the store?
Right.
And if I don't respond by a certain time, like, cause I'm working, and then you come back and say, never mind, I got it. I'm straight. I'm good. Yeah. And then I text you and I'm like, yo, so did you go to the store? And you like, nah, I'm straight. Nah, I'm gonna figure it out. That's your rejection. Yeah. And they're like, wait a minute, that's not my rejection. I'm like, let me show you how it is, because you felt vulnerable when you made a request. Making a request to someone is vulnerability. Hey, I opened up. Hey, I need to go to the store. You told me a need. Then by my silence, what you did is that, because that vulnerability now puts you at my mercies. So by my silence, you took that as, I want to say no, but I was busy. I didn't even see my phone. So you took it as, oh, he want to say no, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to take back control because at that point I'm in control. But what you want to do, you want to take back control and take it off the table because you want to have control over it. So now I'm pulling it off because that's a request that I'm waiting on you. And I'm good. And so my whole thing is, you have to, if you're not going to suffer in silence, you have to deal with self-awareness and you have to deal with the fact that, yo, in a certain aspect or a certain place, there's a level of vulnerability that comes with it.
Yeah. And then stop looking for conclusions to come from external sources. You know what I'm saying? I was looking at Will Smith, and he was talking about how when Willow did with my hair back and forth, how it just went viral and everywhere, and she was blowing up, and she had signed this contract deal and everything, and they was on tour, and she performed after the first night, and she came off stage and she was like, "Okay, Dad, I'm ready to go home."
Yep.
And he's like, "You can't go home. You made an agreement to do this tour." And she was like, "But I did it. I'm ready to go back home." And he was like, for that moment, he looked at her like and realized that as a child, I can't force her to do what I would do.
Yeah.
And then, like, you know, you imagine how people stay in stuff
Yeah.
and continue to do things to either appease people externally.
Yeah, man.
And I think that's a dangerous spot to be in as well.
Yeah, man.
That when
Super
you're
dangerous.
done, it's okay to be done. Or if you don't feel up to it or you don't want to do it, like, just say it. You know,
Super
like,
dangerous.
like when I retired, I was like, yo, I'm not doing this anymore. And I think when we can articulate that and be okay with it and not try to find conclusions externally from people, like somebody coming up to me saying to me like, "Man, I'm glad you do that." I didn't need that because I had already internally made my decision and was at peace with it.
Yep.
But you have people who will make decisions internally and then wait for someone externally to bring conclusions for you.
Yep.
And I think that's not fair.
Yep. I mean, like now I'm living by this motto that I said it a long time ago, but now I'm really living by it. Like, your support is welcome, but it's not needed.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to do this because I have rationalized that this is what's best for me in my life. And I feel like this is what God is leading me to do.
Yeah.
And if you come along and support it, shout out to you.
Yep.
But if you don't, guess what? It's
the
okay.
Train will still move.
Yeah, train will still move. And I think that we, and I'm so glad you brought up like being there for people, because that was my thing. I was suffering in silence, but performing for people.
Yeah.
So it was like, yo, I was legit hurting, you know, crying every night, grief, depression, suicidal thoughts, all of that stuff. But then showing up as the quote unquote best self to be there for everybody else. And
because that's what society tells us.
Exactly.
You're a leader.
Exactly.
Push through it.
Exactly.
Pray through it.
Yep.
Like,
resilient. And the thing is, like, you know, like I started to ask people, certain people around me, like, hey, what do you believe my best attribute is? And like out of 10 people that I asked, 8 of them said resilient. And I'm like, at some point, even the most resilient gets tired of being resilient.
Has to be.
So sometimes, like, what is looked at as a compliment ain't a compliment no more. Like, you know, at some point in my life, like I don't even like to hear the word potential anymore. Yeah. Like, people like, oh man, you got so much potential. And I'm like, dang, I'm 38. Like, you know, like that sound good, but shout out to that. But if I'm not working towards that potential, if I'm not progressing in that potential becomes a cuss word to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, yo, like, I want to live in the reality of that. Yep. Like, I don't want to live, because potential means that there is something that I haven't tapped into yet. Yeah. And even though I was like, yeah, like I still want to, you know, still be tapping into things and growing into things, but just not the potential in the same area. Like, I want to be executing whatever potential that's on me. Absolutely. So it's like, yo, I was performing for people and doing and showing up and doing that, but I was suffering in silence, man. So I just tell people, man, like, yo, you know, the same decision you made to live for you and the same decision I made, people in society will call it selfish, call it whatever. But at some point, and when you're in a leadership position, they don't view you as a person, they view you as a leader. You lose personhood for the sake of leadership.
You're no longer human.
You're no longer human. You better be Superman all the time. Right. When I see you, you better have that cape on. Right. But my whole challenge to everybody that's listening, man, is that if you love Superman, you gotta love Clark Kent too. You got to.
Because you can't have one without the other.
Can't have one without the other. What fuels Superman and his dynamicness is the humanity of Clark Kent.
Absolutely.
And even Superman had a weakness.
Yes. And all of us have it.
Yep.
And we have to admit what that weakness is.
Got to.
And, you know, if you really realize what those things are, like, that's leading you that path, and you start saying, you know what? I notice that when I'm by myself, I go here. I can't be. Yep. And you become aware of that. You say, okay, I'm not going to do that. Yep. You have to understand that.
Yep. I don't, you know, and for me, I don't think that Superman's biggest superpower was the fact that he can pick up buildings and beat up enemies and fly and you know and run through walls and do all of that stuff. I think his biggest superpower was the fact that he knew what his kryptonite was. Yeah.
Yep.
He knew
Yep.
he knew what his weakness was. Like,
Yeah.
this is my weakness. I'm gonna stay away from that.
Absolutely.
If I get close to that, that's going to hurt me.
Absolutely.
Like, I think that was his biggest strength.
Yeah. And I think that's the key, that our society puts so much input and insight on what you can do.
Yeah.
And the reality is, it shouldn't be what I can do. It should be what I can withstand, or what I
Yeah.
can identify and avoid, you know,
Yep.
like that's
What I can acknowledge about myself.
period.
Yep. The whole self-awareness
Period.
piece. When
Period.
when Paul says, when I was a child, I thought I was a child, I was supposed as a child, but when I became a man,
I put
like
away.
I put away. Like, that's a self-awareness thing. He was saying, like, that's what made manhood for him, to know what to put away, not the gathering of things, but what to put away. So I think that is, like, in suffering in silence, is knowing, like, yo, what's wrong with me? What's a trigger for me? What, you know, what causes me to go there? What causes me to feel? Like, okay, cool. I need to steer away from that, or I need to do this different, or I need to do this different.
Yeah. And I also want to say to everybody who's listening that may be either experiencing this, where you are suffering in silence, or you've been there, whatever, like, I want you to understand that, number one, you're not by yourself. Number two, I want you to understand that this too will pass, but it's not going to pass without you doing the work.
Yep.
You know, and I want you to really get to that place in your life where you can say, hey, I know this is what I'm going through. I know this is where I am, but I can identify these notions, and I can avoid those things, and I can change, and I can live, and I can be happy, and I can be fulfilled. And then my prescription to you today would be this: disconnect yourself from anything that's holding you back from living the total you that God called you to be.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man.
What you think, AD? What's your
And my prescription, and my prescription would be just this, man. Like, whatever your issue may be, we all have them. Stop feeling like your issue is insurmountable. You're the only one that understands it, and you're in this by yourself. Yeah, because you're not.
Facts.
And there are other people that are dealing with, or have dealt with, I don't even want to say worse, because whatever you're feeling is what you're feeling. A lot of times people say, well, you know, it's worse. People, like, you're diminishing what I'm feeling.
Right.
Like, it doesn't matter that somebody's dealing with something worse.
My reality.
My reality is my reality. I don't know why we do that. Like I'm gonna cripple what you're dealing with, and then tell you that it's other people dealing with worse. It doesn't remove what I'm dealing with.
Facts.
Like, so
Facts.
just allow yourself to feel, but then also acknowledge what you feel, and put yourself around people, and get you some help, man. Like, don't be afraid to ask for help
At all.
ever.
Painkillers, man.
Yeah, man.
It's been Marquis
And AD.
Hey, we're just gonna talk your pain away, man. Until next time.
Till next time.